solo and smart. That's what some call a growing number of retirees that are planning their next chapter. Defined as people who are not married and do not have children, there are more solo agers in this country than ever before. Fully 1/3 of middle-aged adults are heading into retirement as singles after never marrying or divorce or widowhood. If you're a solo ager or no one, how do you plan your retirement differently? What new choices are there now that did not exist in the past? And how do you navigate and understand what our options are? Stay tuned to this next episode where we talk to an expert who literally wrote the book on this topic. Welcome to Seniority Authority, the podcast where I track down experts to answer your questions on aging. Thanks to our show sponsor, the Riverwoods Group, Northern New England's largest family of nonprofit retirement communities, where active adults find community, purpose, and peace of mind. Visit riverwoodsgroup.org. Now, let's hear from today's guest. Welcome to Seniority Authority. I'm your host, Cathleen Toomey. If you think of yourself as solo and smart, this is the show for you. We are talking with author, speaker, and former caregiver, Carol Marak, who is launching her book, Solo and Smart, this year, and who created the Elder Orphans Facebook group. Carol has been extensively quoted on the topic of solo aging by the New York Times, U.S. News and World Report, PBS, the Washington Post, and other national media. She is currently teaching online live masterclass and coaching events on aging alone strategies through the leaderjam.com podcast platform. As a tech professional who stepped away from her career to be a caregiver for her parents, Carol knows firsthand the challenges of aging. As a single adult, she began researching options on this topic in the early 2000s after writing a blog about her experience caring for her parents. Since then, Carol has received a certificate in the fundamentals of gerontology from the University of California. Welcome to Seniority Authority, Carol.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
It's so nice to have you here.
Thank you.
Now, you had a big life choice a while back. You were living in beautiful California, having a successful career as a tech professional, and you decided to move back to your native Texas to care for your parents, and which put your life on a totally new trajectory. Can you tell us what inspired you to start writing about your caregiving experiences on a blog?
Good question. The reason I had moved back to Texas was to help my parents as they were going through the elderly years. They needed quite a bit of help, and I maintained my job in another position in Austin, Texas after I moved back. And I realized that there were so many, I would say there were about 30% of coworkers and colleagues that were going through the same situation that I was in terms of helping my parents, and they were helping an elderly relative. And what caught me was that they were as frustrated as I was, because there were very few resources for caregivers at the time. And this was back in the late 90s, early 2000s. And many of us were just really starving for information on what to do. I mean, what do we do? And it was just crazy how few resources were available to us. And so that was very frustrating for me, and I saw the same for them. And one in particular that caught my attention as well as my heart was a woman my age at the time, and she was helping her mother, who lived with her, had suffered from several strokes, and her mother was living with her family. And my colleague was having a really tough time raising her children, because her children were still in grade school, because she was an older type of mother, and taking care of her mom and juggling the two. So, several times a week she would show up at work crying and frustrated. And it really broke my heart because I felt as if no one is listening to us at work, of all of our frustrations. And so it was hard. So that's what got me starting to write about our issues and taking it upon myself to create like a support group there at work so that we could discuss our issues and hopefully together share resources or even explore what can we do together as a group in helping our parents as we work full time.
Well, that's a great idea. And it's so funny because that is part of the impetus for seniority authority is I have had similar experiences in my town. People know that I work for Riverwoods, which is a retirement community. And so increasingly they come up to me at cocktail parties and dinner parties and say, what about this? And my mom, I think, needs assisted living. Can you explain what that is? So I do think there is a lack still of a centralized source of information for people who all of a sudden need to be very smart about topics they have never heard of. So you and I have the same inspiration that once you go through something and you learn something, you want to share it with others to help them along and to kind of speed their process so we can all get smarter together.
That's right.
Tell me a little bit about the demographic factors of solo agers now. We touched on it a little bit in the introduction. Why are there more solo agers now than ever before?
I would like to point to the boomer generation. However, it's not just boomers who are not getting married or maybe having more divorces. Well, let me put it this way. My generation, the boomers, have a higher divorce rate, and we've had fewer children through our marriages. So those are the two biggest factors for people in my age group. And then for Gen Xers as well as millennials, and maybe even before that, people aren't getting married. For one thing, that's probably the biggest reason. Perhaps it's divorce as well that affects maybe the Gen Xers like it does the baby boomers. But I think primarily, and then the millennials just are getting married later in life, not having children if they do get married. So they get pets instead.
That's true. Starter children.
And a lot of the boomers do that as well, right? I had a cat for almost 19 years, and she definitely was my daughter. So I can relate to that. But I think those are the biggest factors. We're just not getting married. And for people like me, I don't want to remarry. I have been married, and I don't want to do that again.
And I've been there, done that.
Yes.
I completely understand. Now, when we talk about retirement, everyone says, okay, retirement, are you ready for retirement? Everyone immediately thinks about finance. Do you have enough money for retirement? And that's the starting point and often the ending point. What do you think people are forgetting about when they talk about retirement?
That has always gotten my attention, even when I first started doing research in senior care and elder care issues. All I ever found online, because I wanted to know, how do you prepare for this? How am I supposed to help my parents when no one is telling me what to do for them as well as my potential older age? And however, what I did find was get your legal documents together and plan your finances and save enough money for down the road, which those are definitely huge top concerns for any adult. However, what we forget about are what I like to think of are the underlying issues that are just as important, like our health, and learning what can we do to stay as healthy as we can. and other issues like social support, social activities, because if we don't have a family to count on or a family to keep us socially active, which a lot of older individuals have, they have kids and families and grandkids that they can socialize with and have a feeling of care, support, and connection. Well, if we don't have that as a solo ager, that's going to put us at risk of isolation, depression, which can exacerbate chronic illnesses and other issues, premature dying even.
Yeah, Forbes recently pointed out that isolation leads to depression, and that is the prevalent cause of early death, even beating out heart disease. And certainly every single person listening to this podcast has experienced more social isolation than they would ever care to experience in this past year of the pandemic. So we all know, I think, viscerally how challenging it is to be socially isolated. This is a big factor for solo agers, as you point out. So, what are your recommendations for solo agers in terms of reducing their potential for social isolation?
Buy my book.
It's not out yet.
So, what I did, because once they died, I realized, oh my gosh, elder care takes a lot of effort from a caregiver, from someone that can help or assist. And once they died, I realized, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? Because I don't have anyone to rely on. And so what I did is I kind of created a map or a guidebook of all the top issues that my parents dealt with, because I knew that at one point in my life, I will be dealing with the same. However, they had 3 daughters, 3 loving, caring daughters that took very good care of them and watched out for them. Thankfully, they had that. But I won't. And another sister of mine won't either. So where do we start? Well, I started with my health because that was the number one top concern. If that wasn't in the best tip-top shape, nothing else really mattered. Nothing. So that's where I started. And I started with my doctor, and we did a really great evaluation. And for myself, I did a lot of research. She kind of guided me through what to research. We did a full, thorough family medical history. And then I started looking at my diet and nutrition with the help of a dietitian. And so we put together a care plan, how I could create better health for myself. And I started walking a lot and exercising and being outdoors. So if I went from moderately good, or I would say higher than moderately good health. And in my last annual visit just a few months ago, my doctor said, "You are in excellent health." So I'm thrilled to say it works. And I feel very capable in caring for myself and making good decisions. So health is where I first started. And then in terms of social activities, I had several big factors to deal with. But how I dealt with social activity or social kind of activities and connections is I wanted to live in a place where I had access to people right where I live. I didn't want to have to drive to social events. I do, but I didn't want to be forced to do that. I wanted people around me all the time.
Okay.
Because I wanted to feel like I was connected to a community of people.
Right.
And so I moved to a high rise. I moved to a highly engaged urban community in Dallas. And I live in a 1-bedroom condo building, and I walk out my door and there are people. And some people like, oh God, that doesn't feel very private. Well, it's very private because we respect one another. We don't invade on each other's privacy. So I'm totally happy here. I have neighbors that I socialize with when I can. We go out for walks. We have conversations. We text each other. We check in on one another. We have coffee downstairs. It's just wonderful. So that's what I did. I put myself in a community where I am socially connected.
And I think that's very important. And I know a lot of people think of having their own home and being alone in their own home as defining independence. But I do think we have to rethink that when we consider aging and the inevitable changes that come with aging. You stop driving at night and your friends are farther away. So you have to kind of recalibrate how you think about life and what is important. And
Yes.
I think you made the right call that community trumps your, big palatial house that you could have. If you're getting smarter, help us reach more minds. Leave us a review on Apple Podcasts so others know we're legit. Tell your friends to follow us on social or subscribe to our newsletter at seniorityauthority.org. One other option that some people think about is the continuing care retirement community concept. Do you think that's something that is a positive for solo agers? What's your view on that?
Oh, absolutely. Because I kind of feel like I am in that type of situation. It's not an assisted living or an independent living community. However, it has the same concepts. And I would think CCRC has even more advantages, like ways to maintain my health, because you have fitness and you have people to cook for you and things like that.
Which is nice.
Yeah,
We all get tired of cooking.
yeah, so absolutely, because like me, you have a built-in social support system and a health support system built in to right where you live. Oh, absolutely. If you can afford it, if people can afford it, I highly recommend it. Absolutely.
And that's good because, as you said, there are fitness classes, wellness clinics, lots of activities, such as you find, not everybody lives in an urban area, but everyone is likely near a CCRC. So that can give you that connection that you're finding just walking out the hall and connecting with other people. So
That's right. Yes. Yes. I mean, we don't have a restaurant downstairs, but we have a coffee machine. It would be great if
yeah.
we did. However, we have little restaurants around here that we have lunch at. So it's fun. And
That's awesome.
yeah, it is. And those are the things that we have to think about as we grow older. And you really need to start thinking about those things when you're, I would say 50. That's when I started thinking about it. But that didn't mean that I moved into this building. It took me close to 10 years to put my plan together.
Well, that was my next question, is having the experience of living through this with your parents. When do you think solo agers need to start making their plan? When is it ever too late to start making your plan? And what would you say is the ideal time to start thinking about it?
I would say the ideal time is 50, the ideal time. However, you can start at any age, even at 65, but you don't want to wait too long because you may not have the motivation to make changes. You may
Yeah,
not.
it takes a lot of energy to make these kinds of decisions, and also to have the energy, if you are going to make a move, to connect socially with other people. I think that can be harder as you get older.
I agree. Sometimes even at my age, I'm in my late 60s, and sometimes I have to make myself socialize. Because unfortunately, when we live alone, we get so familiar with and comfortable with being alone. And there's nothing wrong with that. I promote being self-reliant. However, you don't want to become not self-reliant. You don't want to become too comfortable where you don't want to be around anyone, because we need that social interaction with other people, because we need that feeling of being cared for and cared about and having conversations. And because let's say you have a medical decision to make or a financial decision, who are you going to talk to about that? So if you have people around you that you trust and you feel connected with, and someone that you can share this kind of information, then we have to think about that. but we can't live in a vacuum. We just can't.
Right. And I often say sometimes spending time in your own head is a bad neighborhood. If you spend, it's good to be alone, but sometimes you spend too much time in your own head and you tell yourself some serious stories. One area where I think you could really get in trouble with, and you and I talked a little bit about this before, is a topic of regret. That solo agers are not always people that have said, I want to be a solo ager. There are people that are solo agers that didn't choose this lifestyle. I am a solo ager.
Mhm.
So talk to me about regret and how does that play into a solo ager's life and how do you deal with that?
In my group, there are many individuals that have, especially the women, the female members, have regret not having children. Now, some couldn't, some didn't, were unable physically to have a child. Some chose not to. Some of us outgrew it,
It's that window.
Yeah. So it affects the ones that really wanted children, but it just slipped away or they were unable to have children. And now they have a hard time being around women or people with grandkids, which I think is very sad because you're losing out, I think, because children can bring so much love into our lives and just so much creativity and it inspires us and makes us feel younger. So I'm always sorry to see that. However, you can't really encroach on someone's feelings. They have to, take care of those however they can. So I always encourage, and we give each other encouragement in the group, to deal with that, to somehow, if it's therapy, if it's some grief counseling, but take care of it, because if you stay in depression, that can really affect how you enjoy or not enjoy your life. And it can also, depression, as you know, can affect an illness. So I just really encourage people to deal with that. I dealt with my own regret, but I did it through psychotherapy. And I've had years of psychotherapy, grief counseling. I've gone through a lot of grief counseling when I lost my parents. That was really tough for me. So I really encourage people to get professional help in that way. And even if you join just support groups that deal with those specific issues, a lot of emotions can be released, I think, and you can get your head back on and your heart straight on that matter. Just find support, find people who have been through that same situation and reach out and ask for help.
Yeah. And I think what you're saying also is if you get your tribe, if you find a little group of folks who are going to be your friends, your support network, you really have to be intentional about that.
Yes.
If you're a solo ager, if you're partnered, it can come sometimes more naturally, but as a solo ager, you have to reach out and make that effort to get that group. You've been working in this field of solo aging for quite some time. What unexpected support or partnership have you found as you have been talking about this and advocating for this? What surprised you on your journey?
I would say my biggest surprise, and it shouldn't have, but it surprises me, the group members, people who are solo agers, we are very resourceful. And we have learned our own way to navigate problems, challenges, and issues, and have come up with some remarkable ways to handle the issues that we deal with. And I think it's because we've trained ourselves, we've had to rely on ourselves and become self-reliant and to build confidence in being a single person. And knowing that no one else is going to step in and take care of us, that we've had to really earn a lot of grit or kind of grasp on to life and figure it out ourselves. And to me, that was the most surprising. I don't know why it should be, because Because I've always thought of myself as being resourceful. So why wouldn't other single people be as resourceful as I am? And I think and it's about the people who are in this situation, not so much about professionals, but the people. We're resourceful and we're very helpful and supportive
To each other.
to each other. And no, that's not really a surprise, but I'm just so grateful that we are, that we are that way, that we extend a helping hand no matter what the situation is. And it's like having family. If you create as you say, your tribe, you have people to rely on. That's why it's so important to have people who care about you nearby.
Yeah, absolutely. With all of the work and the time that you spent on this topic, who, in your opinion, does the best work and research on solo aging or on aging in the US? Where do you go to find the new trends, the new information?
I have to say, I'm really impressed with the UK. And many of their organizations, I mean, they're all research, but they just do some really phenomenal research on aging alone in the UK. It hasn't taken off like that in the States so much that I've noticed. However, if there is there are a few universities like the University of Stanford, the Center for Longevity, they're one of the top ones, and a few universities that have done a great job. But the topic of aging alone, and it surprises me, it's still pretty dormant here in the States. It's very surprising.
Well, we will, if you send me the email, we'll put that note and the other universities in our show notes so people can take a look at it. What topics does your book, Solo and Smart, cover? And when is it coming out? When can people buy it?
Oh, thank you. Hopefully we'll be out the end of this year. However, my publisher just sent back chapter 8. He wants me to rewrite it. And this is going to be an ongoing process, I know. So it could go into 2022. So
Okay.
I'll keep you posted on that. But the topics really deal with, for me, I had to get my head straight first. And there was a couple of issues that I needed to address first. And that is to manage my stress of living alone. Because once I realized, oh my gosh, elder care is a very stressful process, it really affected me. I started to worry. So I help people deal with stress and worry of living alone, and then really go into shifting our mindset instead of focusing on problems and challenges that we're looking at, to shift that to seeing possibilities instead. And there's a whole process around that. And then from there, we're ready to start planning. And then I walk you through a process of the top aging concerns and how do you assess them, and then how do you plan for them. And my top 2 were health and money, and that's where I started. So it's really up to the individual on what their top concerns are, because what is for you is different for me. But those were my 2 very top concerns. Once I had those 2 set, then I looked at social engagement and building support, because that was my 3rd concern.
How has COVID and the pandemic affected what you know or what you are doing as a solo ager?
I hate to say it this way, but there is good news from COVID, and it really shined the light of people who are isolated and lonely. And I think it was a huge wake-up call for our professionals and our academia, because it's such a huge problem. Because solo agers are hidden in plain sight. Through COVID, I think it opened up to the issues that people who are isolated and lonely face. However, those who are aging at home have faced them all along. It's just that no one really knew. Well, they may have known about it, I'm not sure, but it really has shined a light on us who are all alone and no one looking out for us. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it absolutely does. I think people now really understand the impact of isolation in a way that they never did before. It's one
Yeah.
thing to intellectualize it, it's another thing to experience it, the frustration and the challenges. And I think everyone has gone through that. So I agree.
Yeah, it's amazing to me of the challenges, and we're just not prepared for it.
One thing I like to do in our interviews is to be able to give people practical things that they can do. So, what three things would you recommend any solo ager who is listening to this podcast now? What are the three things they should do tomorrow if they're really concerned about this topic?
Be patient with yourself and to find ways to give yourself the best self care as possible and to treat yourself exceptionally well.
Okay, that's good.
It starts right here first.
So, kind of give yourself a break and
Patience with yourself. Really treat yourself well. And I don't mean spending money and going out shopping. I mean, explore different ways that you feel more creative and you feel like you're going to be able to contribute. Find ways to help yourself feel more confident, self-reliant, and to have self-esteem, because from there you can really blossom and learn different ways to give back if you choose to do that, because there are so many people out in this world that need connection also, and we need each other. So don't shy away from yourself, and don't be hard on yourself, because people don't want to be around doom and gloom, really.
right. And I think also you have to realize that just listening to this podcast is doing something positive in your life. So you are thinking about aging, you are seeking out information. So pat yourself on the back for that. And
Absolutely.
then you might sit down and make a list like Carol made and say, what are my top concerns? Health, money, legal, social, and caring. So maybe you make a list of what those are, what your top concerns are, and then maybe make a list of who's your tribe right now and what other people do you want to add to your tribe. So I think as you talk about the things that you need to do, also think about and recognize all that you currently have in your life. So recognize that you are not starting out behind the eight ball. You have more than you may anticipate that you have.
That's right. I love making lists. I'm a huge fan of journaling. And I've been journaling for about 20 years now, or probably 25 years now. And it helps me get out any type of mind chatter that I might have, any negative thoughts about myself, or anything that I feel that's holding me back. I just put it all out there in a journal and I just let it go. And I never judge myself. Don't judge what you're writing. Don't judge your feelings and your thoughts. Just put it on paper and let it go. And sometimes what you're writing won't even make sense. It's just a way of letting go. And because I'll go back, months or years later and read some of what I'm writing for the day, and it's like, what?
Yeah.
Which is good.
Yeah, it is. It is. It's getting it out of your head again. Putting it on paper is a way to open your mind and free your mind so that it has more space to think about other things and more productive things.
That's right. And another tip that I have used in the past, and I haven't for a while, but is creating a vision board or a dream board. Because I'm a visual person. And if you're a visual person, then cut out pictures or that illustrate how you want to be and put it on a poster board and put it in your bedroom. And when you wake up every morning, look at it. I swear it works. I have done it many times for vacations, for jobs, for money, for moving places I wanted to live, and it works.
Yeah, that is a great idea. And that's another practical tip that you could you could do. Again, if you're a visual learner, just get a pile of magazines. As Carol said, spend some time thinking about what do you want the vision board or the dream board to look like? Is it next year? Is it the next 5 years? And what do you, again, that inventory of what do you have in your life that you want to keep and you want to cultivate? And then what do you want in your life that you would like to make a plan to have happen in your life? What are those things that you're going to go after, whether it's goals, as Carol had put it, to be healthier? So creating a new regimen for exercise or a new plan for healthy eating, whether it's travel. It's a great way to, in this time, especially when so few of us have things to look forward to, because it feels like this pandemic will never end. And hopefully by the time this podcast is reaching your ears, we will be in a different phase. But it's a way to constructively visualize what you would like to manifest in your life. So that's another really good practical tool that you could take a weekend and play with. That's a lot of fun.
And just know that you have more power than you think.
That's a great phrase. You have more power than you realize.
Than you realize you really do.
Carol, this has been such a great conversation. I want to make sure that I ask you, is there anything that I haven't asked you today that you would like to share with all of our listeners?
Oh, I think I just shared it, is that we do have the power within ourselves to be the person and to create a lifestyle that we want. Because I am an ordinary person, believe me, and I have created a lifestyle that I didn't think I had the wherewithal to do it. And I did. And so do you. No matter what it is, it doesn't have to look like my life. You don't want it to. I'm sure you have your own ideal way of living. Go for it, because it's possible.
That's an awesome message. And I'm glad we don't all have to live in Dallas. Not that I don't love Texas, but but I think Carol's got a great attitude. Thank you for sharing all of your wisdom. Thank you for pioneering this topic and being out there and talking about it so that other people can share the same questions and share answers. Carol's got a very active elder orphans group on Facebook, very active group. She is author of Solo and Smart, coming out hopefully in 2021. Thank you so much, Carol, for all that you've shared with us and for your suggestions.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you. I appreciate the invitation. I appreciate being able to speak about this topic because it's so important. It's such it's ever growing. You know, there's so many of us and so many more of us to come who are living alone. So thank you.
You're welcome. So that's our show for today. If you enjoyed it, please visit our website, seniorityauthority.org, and send me questions. Send me your questions so I can shape a future episode and answer your question. This is here for you to try to help you get smarter about growing older. Meanwhile, do me a favor, spread the word, visit us on Facebook, rate and subscribe us on your favorite podcast platform site. And until then, let's get smarter about growing older. Until next time. Thanks to our show sponsor, the Riverwoods Group, Northern New England's largest family of nonprofit retirement communities, where active adults find community, purpose, and peace of mind. Visit riverwoodsgroup.org. That's our show for today. Did it spark a question? If so, send us your questions at seniorityauthority.org and we'll track down the answer. Meanwhile, don't forget to subscribe, like us on Facebook, follow us on YouTube, and rate us on your favorite podcast platform. Until next time, let's get smarter about growing older.